Hey guys, tonight we step straight into the soft shimmer of another time, the Edwardian age, where every mirror seemed to glow with a golden haze and every evening ended with the quiet rustle of silk and secrets. You stand in front of a tall, gilt-edged mirror, the kind that distorts just slightly, flattering without mercy. Around you, the gaslights flicker, painting ripples of amber across the wallpaper. Outside, the carriages clatter home through misty London streets. But in here, the world shrinks to perfume bottles, pearl-tipped combs, and a half-open jewelry case breathing faintly of powder and roses. You're about to peek behind the scenes of a nightly performance, one few men ever saw and most women never discussed. And honestly, you probably won't survive this without side-eyeing your own moisturizer routine. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love seeing the map of sleepy souls lighting up the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing where the evening begins in the Edwardian dressing room. It's not the chaotic space of a modern bathroom, all LED mirrors and electric toothbrushes. No, this is a sanctum, a space of ritual, a stage where one woman, usually upper middle class, sometimes with the quiet help of a maid, performs the delicate art of undoing the day. The first thing you notice is the light itself. Gaslight, a moody humming thing that fills the air with the faint scent of iron and heat. The Edwardians were proud of it, though between us, it wasn't exactly kind to the complexion. Historians still argue whether prolonged exposure to gaslight yellowed wallpaper faster than it aged faces, but everyone agreed. Nothing made diamonds sparkle like it. The glow softened every imperfection, turning powder into porcelain and tiredness into mystery. On the dressing table, every object gleams. There's a cut glass bottle of lavender water, a silver-backed brush, a small pot of beeswax for the eyebrows, and something called Venetian bloom, which sounds romantic until you learn it was tinted with lead carbonate. Beauty back then always came with a little danger attached, like dating someone whose job title is amateur magician. You run a finger along the lace runner spread across the vanity top. Even the lace feels serious, starched into delicate geometry. Beside it rests a calling card tray, because in Edwardian society, even your nighttime routine had to look ready for visitors. Imagine the horror of being caught unpowdered if a friend dropped by early the next morning. The air hums with perfume, but not the light, crisp mist of modern scents. This is thick, animalic, and musky, a blend of civet, ambergris, and rose made potent by the chemistry of the day. You can almost taste it, honeyed, cloying, dangerously heady. And yet within that perfume cloud lies an intimacy lost to modern beauty. Each woman's scent was hand-mixed by apothecaries, adjusted like a secret code. You catch sight of your reflection in the mirror, your face haloed in flickering yellow, and suddenly you realize that this nightly ritual was as much about identity as appearance. In an age where women were corseted in body and expectation, the boudoir was rebellion wrapped in satin. Here, a woman could unlace herself, literally and symbolically. A maid might hover discreetly, folding petticoats, or winding up the music box that plays a waltz soft enough to slow the pulse. The faint tick of the clock joins in. It's nearing 9:30, which, for the Edwardian hostess, marks the end of public grace and the start of private beauty. You study the contents of the dressing table again. Everything has its sequence. First comes the unpinning of jewelry, each clink a tiny sigh of relief. Earrings, brooches, the long chains that caught on high-necked blouses. Then the rings slid off one by one, leaving faint impressions on pale fingers. Beauty in this age wasn't spontaneous. It was curated, layered, and by bedtime, carefully dismantled. Historians still debate whether this ritual was empowerment or imprisonment. Was the Edwardian woman's beauty regimen an act of autonomy, a private pleasure, or just another cage disguised in lace? Maybe both. You can feel both truths coexisting in this room. She chooses her cold cream, yet she follows unspoken rules of class and decorum that dictate how her skin should glow and how her hair should fall. The floor creaks softly under your feet. You glance at the wallpaper, pale green damask, shadowed by gaslight. Somewhere nearby, a servant extinguishes hallway lamps, one by one. You can smell the faint mineral tang of the gas fixtures cooling. It's the scent of transition, from public to private, daylight to dream. You look again into that gilt-framed mirror, and the image looking back at you seems already softer, almost ghostly. Maybe it's the flicker of the flame, or maybe it's what always happens when the world slows enough for reflection, literally and otherwise. On the table, next to a velvet-lined jewelry box, sits something odd, a glass dome encasing a delicate fan made of ostrich feathers. It's absurdly impractical and completely enchanting, like the Edwardian era itself. Beauty and excess danced in lockstep. Even the simplest objects carried an air of theater. You imagine the chatter of the drawing room fading behind you, men still talking politics, the faint laughter of women comparing hats, the clink of brandy glasses. But here, in the boudoir, the curtain falls. You're left with only the quiet ritual of becoming yourself again. A soft knock at the door. The maid enters with a steaming pitcher of water for the washstand. The scent of lavender soap drifts through the air. You know what comes next, the loosening, the washing, the unmasking, but that's for later tonight. For now, you linger in this golden half-hour between the outer world and the inner one. There's something hypnotic about it, isn't there? The repetition, the care, the almost sacred devotion to the self. No phone, no ring light, no get ready with me playlist, just gaslight, mirrors, and time. Maybe that's why this moment feels so luxurious. In slowing down, you see yourself clearly, perhaps for the first time today. You reach for the last switch on the wall, a brass lever that dims the gaslight to a gentle whisper of flame. The mirror no longer reflects, it glows. Somewhere outside, a carriage wheel rattles, and you realize the night is fully here. The dressing room breathes like a living thing, warm, perfumed, patient. And as you exhale, your fingers brush the first clasp of the corset. The ritual has begun. You draw a long, slow breath as the faint hiss of gaslight fades behind you, and your hands find the first ribbon at the back of your corset. There's a moment, a pause that feels almost forbidden. For hours you've been cinched into whalebone and silk, spine straight, breath shallow, elegance enforced. Now at last you reach the point of release. The maid, trained in discretion, steps behind you and begins to unlace. You feel the fabric loosen like the day itself unraveling. One by one the laces give way. The pressure eases. Your shoulders lower half an inch. There's a faint sigh, yours, though it could be anyone's, because every Edwardian woman, regardless of her station, knew this same quiet ecstasy. The act of taking off one's corset wasn't merely undressing. It was liberation. You catch your reflection again in the mirror. Your waist, no longer trapped in that perfect hourglass, expands just slightly. The human form, rebelling against the architecture of fashion. And it's oddly beautiful. Historians still argue whether corsets truly deformed bodies or whether that's just a myth exaggerated by later moralists. But if you've ever spent 12 hours laced into a whalebone cage, you know the truth. Even myth can leave marks. The corset, heavy with stitching and stays, finally lands on the chair beside you with a soft thud. A sigh of fabric follows. You run a finger down its smooth satin surface, pink, embroidered, absurdly pretty for something designed to restrict. It smells faintly of lavender sachets and iron. In Edwardian society, everything, even discomfort, was perfumed. You slip into something new, the soft, whisper-like cotton of a nightgown. Not the clingy kind you'd find in modern catalogs, but something pure and voluminous. It drapes like a cloud, sleeves brushing the wrists, neckline modest but laced with tiny ribbons. There's comfort in its simplicity, a freedom long delayed through the day's parade of petticoats, chemises, corset covers, and underskirts. You imagine the laundry list of garments an Edwardian woman wore each day. By the time she reached the outermost layer, the dress seen by the world, she was already encased in up to 10 others. 10. Think of that the next time you complain about your jeans. The Edwardian wardrobe was a kind of architecture, built layer by layer, each serving its purpose: modesty, structure, beauty. And now, each comes undone. You peel off the stockings next, rolling them down over ankles that have been whispering for air since breakfast. Beneath the fabric, faint ridges trace the shape of garters. You rub the skin gently, the way women did to restore circulation. A small act, yet essential. Some magazines of the time even recommended a light slap to stimulate the limbs. You decide against that, content with the luxury of oxygen. You might laugh to learn that the Edwardians believed in air baths. Yes, literal standing naked by the window moments prescribed for health and complexion. The idea was that fresh night air could tone the skin and invigorate the blood. Historians still debate whether this was genuine health advice or just a genteel excuse for streaking with class. Either way, it sounds bracing, especially in a London winter. The maid folds the discarded garments, her movements quiet and practiced. You wonder if she has a cotton nightgown of her own or something rougher, perhaps plain calico, maybe even reused muslin. Because, of course, comfort was tiered. Silk for the rich, cotton for the middle, and coarse linen for those who served. Even rest came graded by income. You walk to the window and draw aside the heavy curtains. Outside, the street lamp glows in the mist, throwing a yellow halo across the cobblestones. The night is soft, muffled by fog. Somewhere down the lane, a hansom cab rattles past, hooves echoing faintly. The city never truly sleeps, but you feel its pace slow, like a giant creature settling down. Behind you, the dressing room waits, a cocoon of fabric scents and fatting warmth. You stretch, tentative at first, then freely, arms lifting overhead. Your spine cracks pleasantly, vertebrae rediscovering their birthright of movement. You roll your shoulders and laugh softly. How strange that something so ordinary, breathing deeply, moving freely, can feel like rebellion. You run a hand over your ribs, noticing the faint red indentations left by the corset. Those marks will fade by morning, but others won't. You think of the women who wore theirs through pregnancy, through illness, even through fainting spells in the name of grace. Beauty must suffer, they were told, and they did. Yet as you trace those lines, you feel less pity than awe. The discipline, the patience, the precision, it's almost athletic. You wander to the chaise by the fire, the one draped in embroidered shawls. The flames dance low, orange and gold. On the side table sits a cup of warm milk mixed with nutmeg, a popular Edwardian sleep aid. You take a sip, the flavor earthy and faintly sweet. The room hums with quiet satisfaction. You think about the unspoken intimacy of this nightly ritual. In a world obsessed with propriety, this was one of the few times a woman could exist without performance. No tight bodices, no hats balanced precariously, no posture to maintain. Just her body, unhidden, unposed, unjudged. Historians still debate whether Edwardian domestic life truly offered privacy or whether it was merely illusion. After all, even here, a maid might remain nearby, unseen but ever present. Yet you sense that within this moment, the slow shedding of fabric, the return to softness, there's something deeply human and timeless. The need to breathe, the need to feel one's own skin again. You reach for a robe hanging nearby, pale cream silk lined with quilted satin. It's warm against your shoulders, faintly perfumed with violets. The sash slides easily into place. For all the social rigidity of the time, there's tenderness in this garment. The robe isn't for show. It's comfort made visible. You move back toward the mirror. Without the corset, the reflection looks less polished but more alive. The lines of the body return. The shoulders slope naturally. The waist softens. You realize beauty hasn't vanished, it's changed shape. And you wonder, if time travelers ever peeked into your own bedroom a century from now, what they'd think of your nighttime rituals. Would they see empowerment in your skincare lineup, vanity in your serums, futility in your late-night scrolling? Perhaps they'd say the same thing the Edwardians might whisper about you. She's doing her best to be beautiful in her own strange age. You smile at that thought, because in the end, this ritual, this unwinding, this shedding of expectation isn't just about appearance. It's about reclaiming space, time, and breath. The corset may come off, but something stronger stays within, the quiet defiance of self-care disguised as routine. You turn from the mirror one last time. The corset, now folded neatly on the chair, gleams faintly in the firelight like a retired knight's armor. The nightgown whispers against your skin. You step closer to the warmth of the fire and let its flickering light kiss your hands. Tomorrow society will demand its perfect posture again. But tonight, you breathe fully, freely, without apology. You sit before the mirror again, skin flushed with warmth from the fire, and reach for a small porcelain jar marked Pond's Cold Cream. The lid fits snugly, with just a faint crack when it opens, like the sound of a secret being told. Inside, the cream gleams pearlescent white, dense as butter. You scoop out a fingertip's worth, and immediately the scent hits. Soft rose, a trace of almond, and something faintly medicinal, like the whisper of pharmacy shelves a century before Sephora. This is the moment Edwardian beauty truly begins. Not with the corset or the gown, but with removal. Powder off, cream on. You dab the cold cream across your cheeks, forehead, chin. The sensation is a shock at first, cold as marble, then slowly melting into silk. In the Edwardian age, this was considered the height of sophistication. No soap for a lady's face, heavens no, soap was for scullery maids and laundry tubs. The proper woman's complexion was to be cleansed, never scrubbed. Historians still argue whether cold cream was more effective moisturizer or makeup remover, but most agree it was the one product that crossed class lines. A duchess might buy hers in a crystal pot from Paris. A shopgirl might purchase a small tin from the chemist's shelf. The ritual, though, was the same. The circular massage, the soft wiping away, the belief that youth could be coaxed back into the skin with patience and cream. You glance down at the table. There's a folded linen cloth, embroidered with initials, and beside it a shallow bowl of rose water. You dip the cloth, wring it gently, and begin to wipe. Pale traces of powder and rouge bloom across the fabric like pink ghosts of the day's face. It's oddly intimate, watching yourself fade into authenticity. And yes, the Edwardians wore makeup, though they pretended not to. Natural beauty was the era's greatest illusion. A dab of rouge on the cheeks, rice powder to pale the complexion, perhaps a little beeswax on the lips. The goal was to appear untouched by artifice, by, ironically, using quite a lot of it. Sound familiar? You lean closer to the mirror. The gaslight catches in your hair, and you notice the glow on your now bare skin, slightly dewy, slightly human. The Edwardians prized that look, not glossy, not matte, but the faint sheen of health. A bloom of nature, the beauty columns called it. Of course, most of that bloom came from meticulous effort and a willingness to spend half an hour massaging your face like you were kneading bread dough. You try to imagine how long this ritual took for those who could afford to perfect it. Some ladies spent an entire hour each night cleansing, toning, and reapplying creams to different parts of their faces. The forehead needed cooling cream, the cheeks nourishing cream, and the lips a dab of honey before bed. Others swore by cucumber slices, lemon juice, or milk. One beauty manual suggested rubbing the face with raw beef to restore vitality, because apparently, self-care and dinner prep weren't separate concepts yet. You smile despite yourself. "You probably won't survive this," would have been an accurate slogan for most Edwardian beauty products. You reach now for another bottle, this one labeled rosewater and glycerine. The cork squeaks softly as you open it. You pour a small amount onto a pad of cotton wool, real cotton, not the synthetic fluff of today. The liquid glimmers faintly pink under the gaslight. As you sweep it across your cheeks, the scent of roses fills the air. This isn't the clean, crisp rose of modern skincare. It's deeper, syrupy, edged with decay, like petals pressed too long between the pages of a book. You inhale, and for a moment you're somewhere else entirely. A walled garden after rain, the memory of perfume trapped in velvet. Beauty, even then, was about transport, wasn't it? You weren't just cleansing your skin, you were washing away the day's noise, reclaiming your face as your own. But of course, not everyone approved. The Ladies' Home Journal once warned that excessive face creams could lead to softness of character, as if moisture itself were morally suspicious. Historians still debate whether that kind of advice reflected science or social control. Probably the latter. The Edwardian woman's skin was expected to glow, but never to suggest effort. You glance at your reflection again and trace your fingers across your cheek. Beneath the thin layer of cream, your skin feels alive, tingling slightly from the massage. You remember that some creams then contained borax or ammonia, harmless in small amounts, terrifying in hindsight. But back then, chemistry meant progress. If a jar promised eternal youth, who cared if it smelled like the underside of a science lab? There's something oddly endearing about that faith in the future, this belief that the modern age could be bottled. You picture a woman in 1905, sitting just like you now, convinced that technology had finally found a way to stop time. She probably smiled at her reflection, hopeful that tonight's cream would make her tomorrow's beauty. Next to the mirror sits a small tin of powder. You open it, revealing a puff as soft as a cloud. Most women would apply a whisper of it before bed, not for show, but to seal in the cream. A fine layer of rice or zinc dust that turned the skin matte and ghostly. You dab a little across your nose, amused by how the powder immediately finds every possible crevice of your vanity. Some things never change. As you lean back, you notice how the firelight and gaslight together create a strange effect, half glow, half shadow. It's like existing in two worlds at once, the romantic and the modern, the natural and the artificial. That tension ran through the Edwardian age itself. They were on the brink of airplanes and suffrage, yet still writing etiquette guides about which kind of eyebrow shape made a woman marriageable. The maid clears her throat softly from the doorway, holding out a tiny saucer. Inside is a slice of cucumber and a sprig of mint floating in chilled water. The Edwardians believed cucumber water cooled the blood. You sip politely, and she vanishes again, ghost-like. You wonder how many of her own rituals are hidden, performed alone in the servants' quarters with simpler tools, perhaps just soap, cold water, and borrowed perfume. The thought lingers. You turn back to your own reflection, your face now pale, luminous, calm. This is the afterimage of luxury, the face the world won't see tomorrow because makeup will soon cover it again. But for now, this clean, fragrant skin belongs to no one but you. You think of how modern self-care routines, for all their serums and steps, still chase this same feeling, the pleasure of undoing, of dissolving the day, of saying, "This is me underneath it all." The jar of cold cream catches the last of the firelight as you close it. You wipe your hands on a linen cloth and smooth the nightgown over your knees. Outside, the fog presses against the window pane, blurring the streetlights into halos. Somewhere in that haze, a bell tolls 10. You smile at your reflection, unguarded, unpainted, unposed. You've come undone in the most elegant way possible. Your fingertips hover over the last pins holding up your hair, small steel prongs that have been gripping, twisting, and tugging since breakfast. You tug the first one free, then another. They clink into a tiny porcelain dish like raindrops against china. Each one falls with a small gasp of freedom. The elaborate updo, carefully arranged braids, coiled buns, ribbons, and probably enough hairspray's ancestor, gum arabic or castor oil, to waterproof a bridge, slowly unravels. The hair loosens, sighs, and spills down your back in heavy waves. The room seems to exhale with you. The air shifts from perfume and starch to something softer, more human, the faint scent of skin and lavender pomade. You pick up the brush. It's a thing of beauty itself, silver-backed with a monogram engraved so finely you can almost hear the jeweler muttering about tiny initials. The bristles are boar, stiff but forgiving, set in neat rows. The maid steps forward to assist, but you shake your head gently. This part feels personal. The first stroke slides through slowly, then another. 100 brushstrokes each night, says the voice of every beauty manual from 1908. They swore by it. Not 99, not 101, exactly 100, as if that extra stroke might summon the spirit of bad hair days past. You start counting quietly, 1, 2, 3, feeling the weight pull and the bristles drag against the scalp. There's rhythm in it, almost hypnotic. Somewhere between 50 and 60, you realize this is more meditation than maintenance. The repetition slows your breath. The mirror catches each soft movement, the hair gathering light like silk in water. Historians still argue whether the 100-stroke rule was genuine grooming advice or just another myth of virtue. Clean hair equated with moral purity, shiny locks with good breeding. But whatever its roots, it worked. The brushing distributed oils evenly, detangled curls, and gave that unmistakable Edwardian gloss you see in old portraits. The kind that made even grainy black and white photographs look luminous. You pause halfway, arms aching. Honestly, it's an upper body workout disguised as elegance. You imagine Edwardian fitness influencers recommending it as the glow-up arm routine of 1905. Somewhere, a duchess flexes and doesn't even know it. The brush gathers a few loose strands. You pluck them away and drop them into the fire, watching them curl instantly into little sparks. There's a superstition about this, burning hair so no one can use it in witchcraft. Edwardian women might laugh about that in polite company, but many still did it quietly, just in case. Beauty and magic weren't strangers back then. You resume brushing slower now. By stroke 80, your scalp tingles pleasantly. The hair feels lighter, almost alive. There's science in this too, the stimulation of the follicles, the increase in circulation. But that's not what keeps you brushing. It's the calm, the ritual, the small, private rhythm that connects body and mind. The fire pops softly behind you. In the mirror, your reflection looks looser, more real. Your hair, unbound, falls over your shoulders like liquid bronze. You twist a section experimentally and catch a faint shimmer from the gaslight. This was the kind of hair described in Edwardian novels as a woman's crown. It wasn't just beauty, it was currency. A well-maintained mane could symbolize health, desirability, even morality. And heaven help the woman who cut it short. The bobbed hair scandal wouldn't hit until the 1920s, but even whispers of trimming too much could raise eyebrows in 1905. Some doctors claimed short hair drained vital female energy. Others argued that long hair trapped illness and should be clipped. Historians still debate which was worse, superstition or pseudoscience. You run your fingers through your freshly brushed hair and smile faintly. Maybe the secret wasn't the strokes at all. Maybe it was the patience. How often do you sit long enough to simply tend to yourself? On the dressing table rests a small pot of brilliantine. It looks like translucent honey but smells faintly of lemon and lavender. You dip your fingertips in and smooth a touch over the ends of your hair. Instantly, it gleams. Edwardians swore by this, an early hair serum made from mineral oil and perfume. A few drops too many, though, and you'd end up resembling a well-polished violin. Your hair now catches every flicker of the gaslight. You twist it into a loose braid, the strands gliding against each other, whispering secrets of centuries past. You secure the end with a silk ribbon, because even bedtime demanded a little flourish. You glance at the floor and notice a faint halo of fallen pins, dozens of them. It's strange how much effort went into holding up what nature meant to fall freely. You gather a few, their cool metal tips pressing against your palm, and realize how symbolic they are, tiny, invisible instruments of order. Each day, they built the illusion of composure. Each night, they fell like confession. The maid re-enters briefly, holding a small dish of castor oil. "For the lashes, miss," she asks softly. You nod, curious. She hands it over with a miniature brush. Edwardian women swore by castor oil to thicken lashes and brows, one of those timeless beauty hacks that somehow survived into TikTok centuries later. You sweep it across your lashes, feeling slightly ridiculous and oddly glamorous. There's quiet now. Just the faint ticking of the mantel clock, the hiss of gas, the soft brushing of fabric as you move. You think about how the Edwardian night was both shorter and longer than ours. Shorter because electric lighting hadn't fully conquered darkness. Longer because people filled the hours with ritual. Without screens or streaming, your mind had space to wander, to notice the gleam of hairpins, the warmth of the brush handle, the way the air smells faintly of rose and dust. By the time you reach 100 strokes, give or take, because no one's counting perfectly, you feel different. Grounded, a little sleepy, a little proud. The day has been brushed out of you strand by strand. You rest the brush beside its matching comb and tilt your head, studying the reflection. The woman in the mirror doesn't look undone, she looks complete. The hair, loose and gleaming, frames her face like an aura. Beauty, you realize, wasn't something the Edwardians painted on. It was something they coaxed out patiently through repetition and care. Maybe tomorrow the world will demand another masterpiece of pins and pomade, hats and veils. But tonight, the masterpiece is this: a woman, her hair, and 100 strokes that lead to silence. You gather the loose ribbon ends, tie them neatly, and glance once more into the mirror. The fire burns low. The gaslight hums softly. You smile not because you're ready for bed, but because for the first time all day, you've stopped performing. The brush rests where you left it, still warm from your hand, but your attention drifts toward the door that leads to the adjoining bath. A faint shimmer of candlelight flickers through the crack, gold against porcelain, a soft halo trembling across tiled walls. You rise, the cotton hem of your nightgown whispering along the carpet, and step inside. The Edwardian bathroom is half modern miracle, half ancient ordeal. The floor glints with patterned tiles, the kind imported from Staffordshire, geometric and cold beneath your bare feet. A marble washstand gleams in one corner, its brass fittings polished to a dull honey color. The bathtub dominates the space, massive, freestanding, cast iron with a white enamel interior that holds light as well as water. You inhale deeply. The air smells faintly of violet salts, lavender oil, and warm metal. A single candle guttering beside the tub casts a buttery glow. Steam curls lazily upward. You test the water with your fingertips. It's hot, almost too hot, the kind of heat that makes you wince before you melt. Tonight's luxury, though, comes with context. In 1908, not every Edwardian home even had indoor plumbing. The upper middle and wealthy classes did, but most people still relied on tin tubs dragged before the fireplace and filled with kettles of boiled water. Historians still argue whether the average woman bathed daily or just sponged off between the major Saturday soaks. For the privileged few like you in this moment, the ritual of bathing before bed was both indulgence and status symbol. You ease yourself into the water. It rises around you slowly, curling up your skin until you're enveloped in warmth. The violet scent blooms, soft and powdery, mingling with the candle's beeswax sweetness. The sound of your body settling into the bath is a sigh in itself, a deep, private exhalation. The room grows quiet except for the faint pop of a candle wick. For a moment, you forget the century. There's just you, the water, and the hum of contentment that travels from your spine to your lungs. Then, as always, the thoughts begin to wander. You remember reading about how Edwardian women were obsessed with pores. Beauty manuals lectured about keeping them open and wholesome. To that end, women sprinkled oatmeal into the bath, or a handful of bran, or for those with more daring recipes, a dash of milk. Cleopatra would have approved. You can picture some poor maid outside the door, whisking curdled dairy into warm water and trying not to gag. You smile. You probably won't survive this. You murmur to no one in particular, picturing an entire beauty column devoted to bath temperatures and cow-derived serums. Still, there's a peculiar sincerity to it all. The Edwardians genuinely believed that cleanliness was both moral and medicinal. A clean body encourages a clean mind, one 1906 pamphlet declared, conveniently ignoring the arsenic in half their cosmetics. Your fingers trail lazy circles on the water's surface. Tiny ripples shimmer across the candlelight, fracturing your reflection into 1,000 fragments. The fire from the adjoining room flickers faintly through the doorway, and the combined glow, amber and gold, turns the bath into something holy. You reach for a small sponge resting on the rim. It's natural sea sponge, porous and delicate. You soak it, squeeze, and let it drift down your shoulder. The water sluices across your skin in slow sheets. Beneath it, the faint residue of cold cream melts away, and you feel, for the second time tonight, completely unmasked. On a nearby stand sits a bottle labeled Dr. Marshall's Bath Essence. You uncork it curiously. The scent, bergamot, violet, and a whisper of camphor fills the room. The Edwardians adored their bath additives. Everything from pine extract to Epsom salts claimed to invigorate the nervous system. Historians still debate whether that was genuine science or clever branding. Probably both. You pour a few drops in, watching them swirl like smoke before vanishing. From the corner shelf, a folded towel waits, thick Turkish cotton, embroidered with initials. You realize that even the humble towel, once a rough linen rag, had become a symbol of refinement by this era. Plumbing changed everything. Water meant ritual, and ritual meant beauty. Your thoughts drift toward the other end of the social spectrum. For many Edwardian households, baths weren't nightly at all. Water was expensive, heating it even more so. Servants bathed last, if at all, in the cooled leftovers of their employer's water. There's a humility, even a melancholy, in that image steam fatting, candle guttering, someone else's comfort already used up. But in this room, the world is warm and golden. You dunk your head beneath the surface once, just long enough to feel the muffled silence wrap around your ears. It's almost peaceful enough to make you forget the centuries' edge, the wars and revolutions waiting a decade away. You rise, water sliding down your skin in slow, shining rivers. For a moment, your reflection in the candlelight looks like one of those Edwardian nudes painters loved so much, soft, human, unretouched. The difference, of course, is that you're not posing for anyone. The only gaze here is your own. You step from the tub and wrap yourself in the towel. The air feels cool now, deliciously so. You blot gently, not rub. Every etiquette guide insisted on that. Rubbing was for stable boys and savages. You grin. Even relaxation came with rules. The maid reappears silently, carrying a bottle of violet water to rinse your hands and neck. The scent fills the air again, delicate, nostalgic, faintly sad. "Thank you," you whisper, and she smiles briefly before disappearing, leaving the quiet to settle back around you. You glance into the mirror above the washstand. The candlelight has turned your skin into pale gold. Drops cling to your collarbone, glimmering like pearls. For the first time tonight, you don't look tired. You look timeless. Maybe that's what they meant by radiance. You slip into your robe again, the fabric cool against warm skin. The towel, heavy with steam, lies draped over the tub's edge like a surrendered flag. You linger one moment longer, fingertips trailing over the marble sink, and think about how extraordinary something so simple, hot water, soft light, can feel when it's earned. The candle gutter flares once more, as if to bow. You turn away, leaving the faint scent of violet and beeswax to fade into the silence. Outside, the rest of the house has gone still. You move back toward your dressing room, skin flushed, heart slower. The bath has done its work. You are softer now, quieter. The night deepens, and somewhere in the distance, a church clock chimes 11. It's time for the next secret. You return to your vanity, cheeks warm and hair slightly damp, feeling lighter, almost reborn. The candles have burned lower now, leaving halos of gold on the marble surface where glass bottles and porcelain jars glitter like captured stars. Somewhere outside, a carriage wheel crunches along the cobblestones, fading into the night. You sit before the mirror again, and as your reflection steadies, so does your curiosity. Because next comes the perfume. In Edwardian bedrooms, scent wasn't an afterthought. It was the grand finale, the exclamation mark on a woman's nightly transformation. You lift one of the cut glass bottles from the table. It's heavy in your hand, faceted like a diamond, and topped with a delicate stopper that could double as jewelry. The label reads Guerlain Après Elendé, one of the earliest perfumes to capture that soft, rainy melancholy. You tilt it, and the pale liquid within glows amber in the candlelight. You remove the stopper. Instantly, the air changes. A swirl of heliotrope, violet, and powder drifts outward, so delicate it feels almost edible. It's lovely, and also, in historical hindsight, mildly alarming. See, Edwardian perfumery was as much alchemy as artistry. Many scents used natural essences, rose, lavender, narrowly, but others leaned on chemicals that would make your modern dermatologist faint. Musk derived from civet cats, ambergris harvested from whale intestines. Even tinctures of lead acetate or benzene derivatives occasionally crept in. Historians still argue whether perfumers knew the dangers or simply didn't care, their priority being the illusion of luxury over longevity. You dab a drop at your wrist. The coolness prickles your skin, and for a second you imagine yourself walking through an Edwardian ballroom, gowns shimmering, air thick with overlapping scents of jasmine, tobacco, and warm candle wax. The perfume becomes part of identity, part of memory. The scent of a woman could linger on gloves, on lace, on letters mailed across oceans. You lift another bottle, slimmer and darker, its label handwritten in faded ink. Lily of the Valley private recipe, probably homemade. Wealthy women often blended their own scents, combining essential oils in cut crystal atomizers. In fact, perfumery was one of the few acceptable sciences for upper-class ladies to experiment with. You can picture someone, perhaps Lady Evelyn herself, tinkering with her formulas late at night, half chemist, half poet, surrounded by petals and pipettes. The air in the room thickens with fragrance now, sweet but slightly cloying. There's something ghostly about it, beautiful, but a little too much. You lean closer to the mirror, watching the way light dances across your skin. Somewhere beneath the layered aromas lies a secret truth. Edwardian perfumes weren't just about beauty, they were about covering everything else. The coal smoke that clung to your hair, the horse manure from the streets, the faint sour trace of gas lamps and unventilated rooms. Perfume was not only adornment, it was armor. And yet, there's elegance in that contradiction. You imagine an Edwardian gentleman entering the same space, brushing off his coat, removing his gloves, and the air between you filled instantly with competing notes. Your heliotrope against his sandalwood, your violet against his tobacco. There's no electricity humming here, no artificial scent diffusers, only the raw chemistry of proximity. You laugh softly, romanced by hazardous fumes, you whisper, so Edwardian. You pick up a smaller bottle next, a travel vial filled with something labeled Eau de Cologne Imperial. This one is sharp, citrusy, refreshing, so much so that you could almost mistake it for cleaning fluid. In fact, it was used as a disinfectant in some households. Perfume blurred boundaries between hygiene, medicine, and seduction. If you spritzed too much, you might smell alluring, or like you just scrubbed a hospital ward. The most prestigious perfumers of the age, like Halbigant and Guerlain, began bottling emotion itself. Après Elendé captured sadness. Jicky captured mischief. Peau d'Espagne claimed to smell like sun-warmed leather and secret letters. There's a delightful absurdity in it, a time when art and chemistry shared a bottle and called it love. You tilt your head back slightly, eyes half-lidded, and inhale. Beneath the perfume lies the faint trace of violet from your bath. The combination is almost dizzying. Maybe it's the lack of ventilation. Maybe it's the fact that some of these perfumes contained nitrobenzene. Yes, the same base used in early explosives. You laugh again, shaking your head. You probably won't survive this, literally. Your mirror self grins back, knowing. But behind the humor, there's something wistful. Every drop of these scents carried stories, courtships, letters, heartbreaks. Some perfumes were designed to fade by dawn, a fleeting dream. Others lingered for days, stubborn and haunting. Modern perfumers still try to replicate them, but none quite capture that Edwardian blend of innocence and danger. You set the vial down carefully. The candle beside it trembles as though reacting to the invisible chemistry in the air. You wonder how much the room itself remembers, how many nights it has absorbed these same notes, century after century, until the very plaster smells faintly of violets. In a corner, the faint hiss of gas pressure reminds you that beauty here was never entirely safe. A stray spark could turn the room into a torch. Yet the Edwardians lit candles and gas jets at once, because dim, layered light made skin look smoother, eyes brighter, and perfume shimmer across the air like silk. Historians still debate whether this obsession with scent and softness was escapism, a distraction from the grinding realities of industrial life, or genuine refinement. Maybe both. Maybe beauty was just their way of refusing the soot. You dab a final drop at the hollow of your throat and sit back, letting the perfume settle. For a moment, you feel both real and unreal, your reflection soft-edged, your scent a century out of time. Perfume was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to haunt. And as you breathe it in, eyes closing, you realize that's exactly what this era has done. It haunts us still, in the bottle-shaped memories that line modern vanities, in every advertisement promising timeless allure. You blow out the candle nearest to you. The room darkens, scent lingering like a secret. The faint violet haze feels alive, as though it's watching you leave. Back in bed, the perfume follows, wrapping you like an invisible shawl. The gaslight hums low. Sleep feels close but not yet ready. There's still more to learn, one more layer of the nightly ritual to uncover, one more truth about what it meant to be beautiful when beauty itself was half science, half sorcery. The mirror catches a last flicker of your movement, then dims to black. The perfume still clings faintly to your wrists as you move back toward the vanity table, where a curious collection of bottles, powders, and tins await. The air is softer now, almost sleepy, but your curiosity stirs again, drawn to the next step in this elaborate pre-sleep ballet, the tonics. You pick up a slender glass bottle filled with something amber and glowing like captured sunset. The label reads Dr. Colley's Brown's Chlorodyne for coughs, nerves, and restless sleep. The lettering is ornate, but your modern instincts twitch. You know enough to suspect that anything that claimed to cure everything probably cured nothing, except consciousness itself. You pull out the cork and catch the faint, medicinal sweetness of laudanum. Yes, opium. The Edwardians were very fond of a drop or two before bed, especially among the sleepless upper classes who found peace elusive under gaslight. Historians still argue whether these nightly tonics were medicine or merely socially sanctioned self-sedation. You set it down quickly, half amused, half horrified. You probably won't survive this, crosses your mind again, but it's already too late for Lady Evelyn. She's been doozing herself nightly since 1902. Next to the bottle sits a smaller tin, its label boasting arsenic complexion wafers for a lovely bloom. You hesitate. The wafers are pastel pink, sweet-smelling, and deadly. Supposedly, they brighten the skin by gently poisoning it, enough to suppress redness and give a milky pallor. Doctors warned against them, but that never stopped the fashionable. You lift one with your fingertips, half expecting it to hiss. The Edwardians didn't fear toxicity the way you do, they courted it. The logic was simple. If it burned, tingled, or numbed, it must be working. And so the beauty market flourished on a cocktail of arsenic, lead, and optimism. Your eyes move to a polished silver case lying nearby. Inside are delicate glass tubes filled with effervescent powder, effervescent health salts for digestion and bright eyes. The directions promise vigor and clear skin upon waking. You can imagine the fizz, the bright promise of renewal, and the quietly ignored fact that it probably contained cocaine or at least caffeine strong enough to launch an airship. You smile. Energy drink 1905 edition, you murmur. Then there's the toothbrush, ivory-handled, bristles faintly yellowed with use. Toothpaste back then was a fascinating gamble. Some formulas used powdered cuttlefish bone for abrasion, others charcoal, and the more adventurous brands added hydrochloric acid to whiten teeth. A few Edwardian women swore by a nightly rinse of salt and brandy, followed by a dab of powdered borax for freshness. It worked, technically, by removing enamel. You lift a tin labeled Calodont tooth powder. It smells faintly of peppermint and something metallic. You dip the brush, then hover over the wash bowl, swirling water just to imagine the ritual. In the mirror, your reflection looks oddly devout, as if you're about to perform some small sacrament. And in a way, you are. Hygiene and holiness were never far apart for Edwardians. A drop of violet water splashes your wrist as you rinse the brush. You pause to inhale, mixing floral calm with chemical sharpness. The juxtaposition feels so Edwardian, one hand on the future, one still clutching superstition. You settle back into the chair and reach for the next tonic. This one's labeled Carter's Little Liver Pills. The instructions suggest 2 before bed to purify the complexion. Translation: a gentle laxative. For a culture obsessed with internal cleanliness, it made sense. If your insides were pure, surely your face would be too. The average Edwardian woman likely ended her evening with a cocktail of opium, arsenic, and bowel stimulants, and yet they looked flawless in portraits. You can't help laughing softly. Historians still argue whether the glow came from good lighting or slow poisoning. Your laughter echoes faintly in the quiet room. You picture a typical dressing table in 1908, stacked with glass, silver, and celluloid containers, all promising transformation. Tiny spoons for powders, dropper bottles for tonics, a small glass of warm water, and always, a handwritten note of caution from some aunt or friend. Take only 1 teaspoon, never 2. You suspect few listened. As the candle flickers, you find your gaze drifting toward a glass jar of something labeled electric skin food. It's thick, creamy, and faintly pink, an early moisturizer claiming to stimulate the nerves of the face through electrical vibration. No electricity was involved, of course, unless static counts. The only thing vibrating was the marketing copy. Still, you open it. The smell is oddly comforting, like rose oil mixed with lanolin. The texture feels rich, cool, alive. For all the pseudoscience, this part feels familiar, timeless. The soothing ritual of touching one's own face, of ending the day by returning to yourself. You massage a dab along your temple and feel your breath slow. Whatever was in these concoctions, the real effect was psychological, permission to rest, to restore, to be cared for. In that sense, not much has changed. Your serums and creams may come with fewer toxins and more disclaimers, but the motive is the same. The day wears you down, the ritual rebuilds you. You glance toward the nightstand where a small crystal tumbler waits. Inside is something golden, fizzing faintly, the last tonic of the night. Brandy mixed with honey and a squeeze of lemon prescribed for sleep and digestion. You take a sip and feel the warmth bloom in your chest. Alcohol was the great equalizer of the Edwardian night. It blurred class, softened edges, and made even the stiffest corset memories fade. The fire has burned low. You can hear it crackle faintly behind you. The gaslights hiss, soft as a sigh. You imagine the hundreds of women across London doing this same routine, some in grand townhouses, others in tiny rented rooms, each with her own blend of powders, pills, and whispered hopes. A few are reading the Queen or Woman's World magazine, where nightly regimens are described with the same reverence usually reserved for prayer. You picture them, earnest and tired, dabbing on cold cream and whispering promises. Tomorrow, I'll be better. Tomorrow, the world will see me fresh. You tilt back in the chair, eyes half closed, and let that image wash over you. There's tenderness in it. Foolishness too, but mostly tenderness. You blow out one more candle. The faint trace of heliotrope and spirit lingers. Outside, the night deepens. Somewhere, a carriage rolls away into the dark. You stretch, bones pleasantly heavy now, and smile at your reflection, slightly dazed, faintly amused, but glowing. Maybe the arsenic worked after all. You push back from the vanity, leaving behind the glitter of glass bottles and the faint ghost of perfume. The night has deepened. The air feels slower now, softer, as if even the gaslight is starting to drowse. Your limbs are heavy with warmth and the lazy ache that follows a long bath. There's only one thing left to do: retreat to bed. The bed itself is no ordinary piece of furniture. In the Edwardian era, it was practically an altar to comfort, status, and the performance of rest. You turn toward it, and your breath catches slightly. It's enormous, carved from mahogany, crowned with a canopy of embroidered silk that ripples faintly in the draft. A cascade of lace drapes down its sides like the hem of a wedding gown. You move closer, fingertips grazing the coverlet. It's silk too, hand-stitched, impossibly smooth under your touch. Beneath it are layers, feather mattresses, down-filled quilts, and sheets so crisp they whisper when you lift them. But the true story isn't silk or lace, it's class. Because in 1905, the fabric beneath your skin told the world who you were. Cotton meant practicality, linen meant respectability, and silk meant money. While working-class women slept under rough wool or patched ticking, society ladies like you drifted to sleep between sheets woven in France or Ireland, embroidered with initials, sometimes even scented with sachets of lavender or rose. You ease onto the edge of the bed, feeling the mattress dip beneath your weight. It's softer than you expected, almost cloud-like, though there's still a faint prickle from horsehair beneath the padding. Edwardian bedding was a paradox, luxurious but stiffly structured, comfort balanced with formality. Everything had order, even the way you lay down. You slide under the sheets and they sigh around you, cool and whispering. The air smells faintly of starch and soap, with a trace of violet lingering from your skin. Somewhere nearby, a clock ticks, steady, hypnotic, almost like a heartbeat. You close your eyes for a moment, then open them again. Because something's missing. Of course, the nightcap. You glance toward the side table where a delicate piece of lace lies folded. You pick it up. A tiny cap meant not for warmth, but to protect the elaborate Edwardian coiffure that took hours to achieve. You tie it loosely under your chin, trying not to laugh at your reflection in the nearby mirror. You look both regal and ridiculous, like an exhausted duchess preparing for hibernation. Still, it served a purpose. Hair was power in Edwardian society, and every woman's mane was a statement. Nightcaps prevented tangles, preserved curls, and supposedly kept thoughts pure. Historians still argue whether that last part was metaphorical or just one more moral flourish in a world obsessed with propriety. You sink deeper into the pillows. They're heavy and full of feathers, slightly too many if you're honest. The Edwardians adored overstuffing everything. Comfort equaled excess, and excess equaled success. Your head sinks in, your hair crackling softly against the lace. You imagine the rest of the household settling in. Servants in their narrow attic rooms, the butler in his small bed beneath the stairs, all separated by fabric, floor, and fortune. Down below, the last embers in the kitchen hearth crackle out. Upstairs, you float in a cloud of silk and sleep, weightless but cocooned in privilege. It's odd, comfort has never felt so structured. You trace a fingertip along the embroidered monogram at the sheet's edge, curled initials intertwined like vines. Every thread speaks of the unspoken hierarchy of domestic life. The lady sleeps, the maid launders. The scent of lavender that soothes you came from someone else's sore hands. Still, as your body softens into the mattress, guilt gives way to pleasure. The sheets are cool, the pillows warm, and you feel as though the world itself has been pressed and folded around you. A light breeze slips through the curtains, carrying the distant hum of London, the clip of hooves, the murmur of voices, the faint metallic clang of a tram somewhere far away. The sound feels far off, safe, like the world beyond your bedroom has paused politely to let you rest. You shift slightly, feeling the fabric slide against your legs. There's something intensely intimate about this, the sheer sensuality of clean sheets after a ritual of cleansing and cream. You think of modern nights, of your cotton pillowcase and synthetic duvet, and realize how much the Edwardians elevated the act of going to bed into a performance of identity. Even the act of turning down the bed was theatrical. Maids would smooth the sheets with wooden paddles, place warming pans under the covers to chase away the cold, and sometimes, if their mistress was particularly delicate, scatter petals or spritz eau de toilette over the pillows. Sleep wasn't simply rest, it was curated. And in some households there was one final touch, a small slip of paper tucked beneath the pillow with a verse or moral aphorism. Something like, "Tomorrow is a clean page, write upon it kindly." You imagine finding one now, yellowed and perfumed, a ghostly bedtime fortune. You yawn softly. The sound feels private, reverent, as though even fatigue should be elegant. The lamp beside you flickers as the gas line hisses faintly. You twist the knob just enough to lower the flame. Shadows stretch across the ceiling, turning lace patterns into drifting clouds. And yet, just before you close your eyes, you think again of how much silk once meant. The same softness that caressed your cheek was spun in distant factories where young women worked by candlelight for pennies, inhaling dust and dye. The luxury of one life resting on the exhaustion of another. You let the thought linger, heavy but honest. Beauty, even in sleep, was never innocent. The mattress seems to breathe beneath you. The scent of rosewater fades, replaced by the faint musk of fabric and feather. Somewhere outside, an owl hoots softly. You roll onto your side, nestling deeper into the silk, and smile into the darkness. Historians still argue whether anyone actually slept comfortably on these things, you murmur. But it feels like floating on history itself. A final flick of gaslight dims to black. The room melts into stillness. And there you are, wrapped in silk and shadow, caught between centuries, where dreams smell faintly of starch and violet. The silk whispers against your skin as you shift beneath the covers, caught in that delicious space between wakefulness and dream. But you're not quite ready to drift off. Not yet. Because in the hush of the Edwardian night, there are still a few peculiar rituals left to discover. You reach toward the small dressing table beside your bed, where a silver tray glimmers faintly in the gaslight's last sigh. It's filled with curious little objects, pots of cream, scraps of gauze, small bowls holding what look like leftovers from a bakery. Except these weren't meant for eating. They were meant for beauty. You lift one bowl closer. Inside lies what seems to be a lump of pale dough. You frown, and then the memory comes: bread poultices. Women in this era believed that a piece of softened, warm bread could draw out blemishes and purify the pores. So, before sleep, one might press it gently against a stubborn pimple or freckle and trust that by morning, the skin would bloom fresh and unblemished. You can't help but laugh softly. You probably won't survive this. Feels a little too on the nose tonight, especially if yeast infections were on the guest list. But you try to imagine it earnestly. The smell of warm bread, the weight of hope resting on your cheek, the idea that even leftover crumbs could hold the secret to beauty. Next to the poultice is a porcelain jar filled with thick white cream. You uncap it, and the scent of milk and honey rises, soft and faintly sour. This, you realize, must be a milk mask, a staple of Edwardian bedtime regimens. Women mixed milk, honey, and crushed oatmeal to soften skin. The logic was simple. If it nourished the body, surely it could nourish the face. You dab a little along your wrist just to feel it. It's cool, soothing, and faintly sticky. In the flickering light, it looks almost like moonlight itself settling onto your skin. There's something tender about it, primitive but kind. A small glass bottle beside the cream catches your attention next. Its contents shimmer faintly amber under the candle's glow. The label, faded but legible, reads, "Onion juice for freckles and fairness." You recoil instinctively, nose wrinkling. Surely not. But yes, the Edwardians genuinely believed that raw onion, applied nightly, could lighten the complexion and fade spots. Historians still argue whether this came from folk medicine or sheer desperation. You remove the cork cautiously and catch a whiff so sharp it makes your eyes sting. "Well," you whisper, "that'll keep more than freckles away." But in truth, this strange ritual wasn't madness. It was science in its infancy, grasping for logic in a pre-laboratory world. Natural acids, enzymes, things we now isolate and bottle, were stumbled upon by instinct. You almost admire it, this blend of curiosity and courage. You set the bottle down carefully, then spot something far more appealing. A tiny sachet of crushed rose petals and rice powder. It's tied with silk ribbon, and when you untie it, a puff of fragrant dust fills the air. This was the Edwardian woman's dry shampoo, an early attempt at keeping hair fresh between washes. You scatter a pinch into your hair, combing it through with your fingers. The powder vanishes, leaving only a faint floral scent. Your reflection in the mirror glows now, soft, hazy, alive. You look like a painting half finished, touched with both shadow and light. You remember reading once that Edwardian women were advised to sleep with their windows open, to let the night air strengthen the lungs and whiten the skin. So you rise and unlatch the window beside your bed. The cold air rushes in immediately, smelling of rain and soot and lilacs. Somewhere far below, a carriage rolls through puddles. The sound is faint, like a heartbeat fading in the distance. You breathe deeply, eyes half closed. The room smells of milk, onions, and violets, a combination that no modern candle would dare replicate. You settle back into bed, but curiosity tugs at you once more. From the lower drawer of the nightstand, you pull out a thin, leather-bound book, the Lady's Handbook of Refinement and Etiquette. Its gilt lettering gleams faintly. You flip to a page marked with a pressed flower, the paper fragile as dried lace. There it is, the face at night. You read aloud quietly, letting the words drift through the darkness. Before retiring, a lady must cleanse not only her face but her thoughts. A gentle soul lends beauty to the skin. Envy and untruth mar the complexion more than sun or soot. You smile, charmed despite yourself. They really believed that virtue glowed through the pores, and in a way maybe it did. You set the book aside and let your fingers wander idly across the nearby tray. A small pot of cold cream, familiar, comforting. A dab of beeswax for the lips. A thimble-sized glass of violet cordial for pleasant dreams. These were the finishing touches, the gentle punctuation marks of an era that believed every act, no matter how private, could be art. Your eyelids grow heavier, but as the room dims further, your thoughts drift back to those stranger beauty superstitions whispered from one generation to the next. A ring of iron under the pillow to draw out bad dreams. Sleeping with a silver spoon near the bed to reflect moonlight into the soul. And of course, the eternal advice, never go to bed angry, it furrows the brow. You chuckle softly, smoothing your forehead as though erasing the evidence. The candle beside you gutters low. Shadows creep up the wall, shaping themselves into strange patterns, the silhouette of the vanity, the gentle outline of your headboard. The milk mask begins to tighten on your wrist, drying into a faint crust, and you realize how tangible this beauty pursuit once was, how physical, how tactile. It wasn't about illusion or filters. It was about the body in dialogue with its own rituals. You turn slightly, pressing your cheek into the cool silk pillow. The faint smell of rose powder drifts upward. You can almost hear the soft rustle of other women across the city doing the same, pressing bread to their faces, dabbing cold cream beneath their eyes, whispering silent prayers to the mirror. The beauty of sleep was literal to them. It wasn't just rest, it was the alchemy between night and skin. And as your eyes begin to close, you wonder if perhaps there's wisdom buried under the absurdity. Because in their strange concoctions and quiet self-attention, the Edwardians were practicing something we've nearly forgotten: slowness. A devotion to ritual that made the end of each day feel sacred, even when it smelled faintly of onions. You exhale softly, smiling at the thought. Historians still argue whether any of these remedies truly worked, but you think maybe that misses the point. Maybe it wasn't about curing freckles or brightening skin. It was about believing that rest itself could renew you. The candle dies completely, leaving the perfume of the past hanging faintly in the air. Somewhere in the darkness, A clock chimes midnight, and you realize the world of bread masks and milk baths is now centuries away. But somehow, it's still right here, in the quiet before sleep. You wake, or perhaps you never quite fell asleep. The air feels different now still, but heavier somehow, carrying the faint aroma of cologne and pipe smoke. The hour is late enough that only a few lamps burn across the street, but the room opposite yours is still lit. And there, through the lace curtain, you catch a glimpse of him. A man stands before his mirror just as you did earlier, but his version of the nightly ritual is a quieter performance, less perfumed perhaps, yet equally deliberate. The Edwardian man's mirror, you realize, reflects its own kind of beauty. He begins, as all gentlemen of the time must, with precision. His hair, parted with military accuracy, glints beneath the yellow gaslight. You can almost hear the faint scrape of his comb through pomaded strands. He dips 2 fingers into a small tin of brilliantine, that glossy, scented oil every Edwardian gentleman swore by, and smooths it carefully through his hair. It gleams like black glass, the smell of lavender and citrus mingling faintly with smoke. You smirk to yourself. The Edwardians took their grooming seriously. The mustache alone was practically a national symbol. The empire might have been vast, but every inch of its masculinity seemed to rest on the curve of well-waxed whiskers. And so, of course, your gentleman retrieves a little pot from his vanity, a pot containing his pride. Mustache wax, made from beeswax, Vaseline, and occasionally bear fat. Yes, genuinely, it was the unsung hero of the Edwardian face. He twirls the ends of his mustache with almost meditative care, creating 2 perfect upward spirals. You half expect him to salute himself when finished. Historians still argue whether the mustache was an act of rebellion or conformity. Some say it represented military discipline. Others claim it was pure vanity disguised as patriotism. Either way, it took work, serious work, to maintain. He turns now to his shaving kit, a gleaming assembly of blades, brushes, and ceramic bowls. The soap puck inside the bowl is swirled into a mountain of froth with a badger hair brush. You can smell it from across the imaginary space, clean, sharp, with a whisper of sandalwood. As he draws the straight razor along his jaw, the blade glints like a sliver of moonlight. You wince slightly at how close it gets, but his hand doesn't tremble. This was an era before disposable razors, before safety guards. Every stroke was an act of faith, and maybe a little vanity. When he's done, he splashes his face with water from a porcelain basin, then pats it dry with a towel embroidered with his initials. For a moment, his reflection looks softer, younger. There's something almost vulnerable about that, the rare glimpse of a man when the armor of the day comes off. He reaches for a small bottle of toilet water, a gentleman's cologne, and dabs it onto his neck. The scent is subtle but layered, bergamot, vetiver, and a hint of leather. The Edwardians knew their fragrances, and unlike the heavy floral blends of women's perfumes, men's scents were crisp, confident, almost mathematical in their balance. You notice the shelf beside him now. It's stacked with curiosities that could belong to any fashionable man of 1908. A pot of Egyptian cream for dry hands, a tin of Dr. Scott's electric hair brush, allegedly charged with magnetism, and a bottle of tonic labeled for vigor and vitality. You can't help but grin. Tonics, of course. The Edwardians believed almost anything could be bottled and drunk in the name of improvement. He pours a small measure of it, amber, syrupy, and downs it grimly. It probably tastes like iron and regret. For all their refinement, Edwardian men carried their insecurities just as openly as the women of their age. A pale complexion meant frailty, a receding hairline whispered shame. Advertisements promised salvation through hair restorers, complexion correctors, and male rejuvenators. Some even contained strychnine, cocaine, or mercury. Yes, beauty and danger were equal partners at this dressing table too. You imagine the conversations that took place in the barbershops of London or Lahore, men comparing razors, bragging about hair oils, debating the perfect angle for a mustache curl. The ritual wasn't just hygiene, it was identity. A man's grooming told the world he was civilized, disciplined, modern. And yet, beneath all that starch and polish, you sense fatigue. The Edwardian era was all about appearances, the illusion of calm and control perched delicately atop an age about to break. The mirror knew more than it showed. Your gentleman sets his razor aside and looks at himself one last time. There's a faint melancholy there, though he'd never admit it. Maybe it's the weight of expectation, the demand to look impeccable, to command respect, to never falter. Even sleep in his world must be tidy. He extinguishes the lamp, the faint outline of his form dissolving into the dark. But the scent of his grooming lingers, a subtle blend of musk and lavender, and it carries you back across time to your own space, where your reflection flickers faintly in the window. You think of the strange symmetry between you, the nightly undoing of the day's performance. You with your milk masks and onion juice, him with his razor and wax. Different tools, same purpose, to make peace with the mirror before sleep. Historians still argue whether Edwardian men truly cared about appearance, or if grooming was merely a byproduct of social decorum. But as you watch the ghostly echo of that mustache glimmer fade, you suspect the answer is simple. They were human. They wanted to be admired, to feel composed, to find a brief refuge in ritual before the world demanded their faces again at dawn. A soft breeze stirs your curtains, carrying the ghost of bergamot and soap. You smile, half asleep, half enchanted by the idea that even a century ago, someone stood in this same quiet hour, facing the same mirror, hopping to meet their best self in its glass. The scent of bergamot still lingers faintly as the night drifts forward, but the room feels different now, colder, sharper, as though the air itself has turned curious. The Edwardian world, you realize, was teetering on the edge of discovery. Science was no longer a thing whispered about in laboratories. It was crawling into the boudoir, the barber shop, the dressing table. And with it came an intoxicating promise, beauty perfected by chemistry. You reach for another memory, this time, not of soft rosewater or silken gloves, but of glass vials and powdered miracles. A vanity table from 1909 gleams in your mind's eye. Upon it, an array of jars and tins bearing proud names like Powder de Radiance, Arsenic Complexion Wafers, and Dr. Allen's Electric Skin Reviver. The labels glow with confidence, gold-embossed, scientific-looking, utterly convincing. You pick one up, an elegant tin the color of moonlight. The inscription reads, "Thoroughly tested by modern science." And just beneath it, in smaller print, contains trace amounts of radium for eternal youth. Yes, radium, the miracle element of the Edwardian era, discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie not 2 decades earlier. It glowed faintly in the dark, a soft greenish halo that seemed almost magical. People were enchanted by it. They stirred it into drinking water, dabbed it onto faces, even painted it onto watch dials. The idea that you could glow with health was suddenly more literal than poetic. You hold the jar carefully in your imagination, feeling both awe and dread. The faint light emanating from within feels alive, almost breathing. And you think, this was beauty at its most beguiling, dangerous, radiant, irresistible. Historians still argue whether the women who used radium creams truly believed in their safety or simply trusted progress too much. Perhaps it was both. The Edwardian faith in science bordered on religion. If it sparkled, it must be good for you. You imagine dabbing a bit of that luminous cream along your cheekbones. The glow would have been breathtaking. For a few moments, your reflection would seem ethereal, lit from within like a saint in stained glass. And then, quietly, the slow damage would begin, the invisible price of beauty. You set the jar back down and reach for another, smaller, darker, more sinister, arsenic wafers for the complexion. The very words make you pause. They were marketed as health supplements to be taken nightly. Purifies the blood, promised the label. Gives the skin a smooth, transparent whiteness. You shake your head. Transparent indeed. You imagine a lady of Mayfair nibbling one before bed, perhaps with her evening tea, unaware that her luminous pallor came at the cost of her health. Her friends would compliment her glow. So pale, so pure. And she'd smile, unaware her beauty was laced with poison. The absurdity of it almost makes you laugh, almost. But then you think of today's serums, acids, and injections, and the laughter fades into recognition. Different ingredients, same dream. You wander mentally through the aisles of an Edwardian apothecary now, shelves gleaming with bottles and promises. The clerk greets you with a bow. Behind him, the glass-fronted cabinets are filled with wonders: carbolic soap for the skin, Dr. Wilson's phosphorus pills for energy, violet bloom elixir for restful sleep. You could spend a fortune here and still not buy peace. And there, at the counter, sits the era's newest obsession: electric beauty devices. You pick one up. It's a small handheld contraption with wires and a battery. The label reads, Dr. Strong's electric complexion brush stimulates the nerves, banishes wrinkles, and improves circulation. It hums faintly when switched on, the sound halfway between a mosquito and a miracle. The Edwardians adored electricity. It was modernity itself, clean, invisible, and endlessly powerful. If it could light your home, why not your face? Beauty salons across London began offering electrical facials, where ladies reclined while mild currents tingled across their cheeks. Invigorating, claimed advertisements. Terrifying, whispered those who tried it. You can't help but grin, picturing yourself in one of those chairs, electrodes gently buzzing against your temples. If you survive this, you murmur to yourself, you'll definitely be radiant. Still, it's hard not to admire their courage, the willingness to experiment, to reach beyond comfort for something transformative. They were explorers in corsets, chasing the edge of possibility one cream jar at a time. Across the Atlantic, meanwhile, the American beauty industry was blooming. Helena Rubinstein and Elizabeth Arden, names that would soon define modern skincare, were just beginning their ascent. Rubinstein's cold cream was hailed as a scientific marvel. Arden, scientific beauty salons promised tailored regimens using skin analysis. The Edwardians were the first generation to treat beauty as both personal and professional, a discipline, almost an art. You find yourself reflecting on that blend of curiosity and recklessness. There was something intoxicating about the idea that a better version of yourself might simply be hiding under another layer of cream, or beneath a carefully measured dose of radium. You lean closer to the imaginary mirror now, the glow of the radium cream casting pale light across your features. It's haunting, beautiful, tragic. A century later, the glow is gone, the jars long buried, but the hunger remains. The eternal promise that youth can be recaptured, bottled, bought. Historians still argue whether early 20th century cosmetics empowered women or exploited their insecurities. But in this quiet, candlelit space, it feels less like exploitation and more like longing. A desire to belong to the future, to be radiant not just in appearance but in spirit, to glow in every sense. The clock on your mantle ticks faintly. You realize the line between science and vanity has always been porous. Whether through electricity or exfoliation, radium or retinol, the ritual remains the same: faith in transformation. The room around you fades slightly now. The light of that long-ago laboratory dream flickers, then dims. Somewhere, Marie Curie is still bent over her glowing vials, unaware that her discovery will illuminate both hope and harm. And you, centuries later, sit beneath your own quiet electric lamp, your skin reflecting its soft hum, your reflection not so different after all. You smile softly, almost reverently. The Edwardians didn't have it all wrong. They simply believed that beauty could be measured, mixed, and made eternal. Maybe they were wrong about the ingredients, but not about the yearning. You set the phantom jar down, your fingertips faintly cold from the imagined glow. Outside, dawn begins to whisper along the rooftops. And you think, perhaps with a touch of irony, that nothing makes the human spirit shine quite like the pursuit of a little light. The light changes again. It's thinner now, paler, neither night nor morning, but that liminal hush where the gas lamps sputter low and the first sunlight brushes the rooftops. The city, too, is changing beneath your half-closed eyes. You can almost hear it. The slow hum of trams, the distant murmur of factory whistles, the faint rustle of newspapers carrying words like progress, invention, cinema. You are still in the Edwardian era, but something electric is happening. Beauty, once the secret language of the boudoir, has escaped into the streets. You can almost picture yourself walking down Regent Street, your boots tapping against clean pavements polished by 1,000 footsteps. Storefronts gleam with glass, new, flawless, seductive. There's a row of department stores stretching as far as you can see. Selfridges, Liberty, Harrods, all newly built temples of temptation. And in each window, beauty is being redefined under the flicker of electric light. A mannequin with rouged cheeks smiles back at you, powdered to impossible perfection. Beside her, a placard declares, "Modern woman, the age of radiance." You smirk faintly. Radiance again. Always the same promise, wrapped in new vocabulary. But you can't deny the thrill of it. After decades of candlelight and carriages, the Edwardian night has learned to shine. You step inside Selfridges, where the air smells faintly of soap, fabric, and perfume. There's a hush of reverence, like a church service conducted in silk. Women in tailored coats drift between mirrored counters, their reflections multiplying endlessly under the new electric bulbs. For the first time, they can see their faces as others do, clearly, evenly, mercilessly. It's unsettling and liberating all at once. At one counter, a clerk in white gloves is demonstrating a new marvel of civilization: electric curling tongs. They look suspiciously like torture instruments, but the women gathered around him gasp in admiration as he transforms a lock of hair into a perfect coil in seconds. The whiff of singed keratin hangs faintly in the air. "Don't worry," you whisper, amused. "You probably won't survive this, but you'll look amazing for the funeral." Nearby, another crowd huddles around a counter marked Cinema Lip Rouge, as worn by the stars. You pause. The stars. It's the new obsession, the flickering faces projected onto silver screens across the city. The cinema has birthed a new kind of beauty, bold, exaggerated, captured in shadows and light. Faces that once belonged only to aristocrats now belong to actresses, and the world, for better or worse, begins to imitate them. Historians still argue whether this was the moment beauty became democratized or commodified. Perhaps both. But you can sense the shift like a vibration beneath your feet. The Edwardian ideal, pale, delicate, restrained, is giving way to something faster, flashier, more daring. You wander further into the store. There's an entire section dedicated to modern hygiene: toothpaste in aluminum tubes, deodorant powders, mouthwashes promising confidence in conversation. Cleanliness is no longer merely moral, it's commercial, and that's new. A gramophone hums softly from the corner, playing a waltz that almost hides the low buzz of electricity overhead. You catch yourself smiling again. For all its gentility, the Edwardian world was racing toward the modern age, an age where beauty would be broadcast, photographed, printed on glossy paper. You leave the store and step into the crisp morning air. The posters on the walls shout colorfully from their frames: Pond's Cold Cream for cinema skin, Vaseline Hair Tonic for gentlemen who lead, Pearl Powder, the choice of the elite. Even the trams carry advertisements now, fluttering by like moving dreams. For the first time, beauty isn't whispered about, it's sold, loud and proud. And the audience isn't just the wealthy, it's everyone. Factory girls, typists, teachers, all stepping into the new rhythm of modernity, where even a jar of cold cream can feel like rebellion. You imagine one of them now, a young typist, perhaps, standing before a cracked mirror in her boarding room. She smooths on her affordable cream, curls her hair with her electric tongs, dabs her lips with a hint of rouge. She doesn't have a maid or a mansion, but she has autonomy. The Edwardian pre-sleep ritual is evolving into something more democratic, more personal. The irony isn't lost on you. The same industrial revolution that blackened the skis has made soap cheaper, mirrors brighter, and perfumes more accessible. Beauty, once a sign of class, is becoming a shared language, a small act of power for those who have little else to control. Historians still argue whether this moment was liberation or manipulation. Was it the dawn of empowerment or the birth of consumer captivity? You can't decide. But as you watch that typist draw her curtains, the city light spilling across her cheek, you know she feels beautiful, and that perhaps is enough. You wander past a small cinema marquee now, its electric bulbs forming a halo around the words now showing, the kiss. You glance up at the poster, the actress's face luminous, her skin flawless, her expression both coy and commanding. The Edwardian woman has entered the public gaze, and the world will never look away again. Back at your imaginary vanity, you see the reflection of that same transformation. The creams, the powders, the perfumes, they're still there, but their purpose has changed. No longer just armor for social status, they've become tools of identity. To paint one's lips is to claim space in the world. You reach out, brushing a little powder from the table. The dust catches the early light and shimmers for a moment, like the last echo of gas lamp glamour dissolving into neon modernity. The Edwardian dream, it seems, was not to stay young forever, but to stay visible, to step into a world illuminated not by candles, but by ambition. And as the sunlight stretches further across your room, you feel the pull of a new century on your skin, humming with invention and irony. Beauty, for better or worse, has gone electric. The hum of electricity fades as your mind drifts again, this time not forward but sideways, into a quieter, grittier world. The store lights and cinema posters dissolve, and in their place rises the sound of boots on gravel, of trains shunting in the distance, of the dull clatter of typewriters and ration tins. The Edwardian glow has dimmed. The new century has arrived, and with it comes the shudder of war. You find yourself standing at the edge of an open window once more, the cool dawn wind carrying the faint tang of coal and anxiety. The year is 1914. The great, polished world you've wandered through, the one of silk gowns and onion masks, has begun to unravel. The dressing tables of London are emptier now. Silver-backed brushes are replaced by rolled bandages. Perfume bottles gather dust beside gas masks. Beauty, once a private performance, becomes an act of quiet endurance. You picture a woman, one of many sitting in front of her mirror in the half-light before dawn. Her husband has gone to the front. The vanity table before her still holds its little army of creams and powders, but they feel almost foreign now. The cold cream has turned stiff in the jar. The rosewater smells faintly of memory. She opens her compact anyway, dabbing her cheeks with a bit of color, not out of vanity but defiance. It's strange how war changes even the most intimate rituals. Rouge becomes armor, powder becomes resilience. To appear composed while the world burns outside is its own kind of rebellion. Historians still argue whether makeup during wartime symbolized strength or denial. Maybe it was both. But in that moment, as she fastens her hair under a factory scarf, you sense she's doing more than surviving. She's reinventing herself. The corsets are gone now, melted down for metal or abandoned altogether. Women move more freely, their silhouettes shifting with the demands of labor. The Edwardian hourglass gives way to something straighter, sturdier, less decorative. The pre-sleep regimen of rose petals and velvet sheets feels almost absurd beside the factory wash basin and the smell of machine oil. And yet somehow, the ritual continues. A quick wipe with a damp cloth replaces the long cleansing with milk and powders. A dab of cold cream remains a luxury, a little whisper of the old world. In small ways, women carry pieces of that vanished elegance with them, tucked inside their uniforms, beneath the grime and smoke. You close your eyes and imagine one of them, the typist from earlier, now transformed into a munitions worker. Her fingers, once powdered and perfumed, are stained with grease and cordite. When she returns to her small rented room, she still lights a candle, still brushes her hair. 100 strokes may be excessive, but even 10 feels grounding. The mirror has become not a vanity but a companion. The war's end brings no true return to the past. The Edwardian housemaid does not resume her corset. The debutante does not simply slip back into her lace. The world has seen too much. Beauty now means survival, clean nails, a neat collar, a steady gaze. When suffrage marches sweep through the streets, you can almost see the echo of the old powder rooms in their determination. Lipstick becomes political. Newspapers clutch their pearls over painted women, but the women keep painting anyway. Each crimson streak across a mouth says, "I am here. I choose this face." You can almost hear the clinking of compacts along protest routes, mirrors glinting in the afternoon sun. A tiny army of reflections marching toward a future that looks very little like the past. Historians still argue whether this transformation of the Edwardian woman into the modern one was liberation or loss. Did she shed beauty, or simply redefine it? You suspect it's a little of both. And what of the men? Their grooming rituals, too, have changed forever. The war leaves its mark in every reflection: a nicked jawline, a missing tooth, a scar running through a neatly parted head of hair. The elaborate mustaches are trimmed short or abandoned. Clean-shaven faces become the new standard, perhaps because so few can bear to see reminders of the old world's indulgence. Evening rituals grow simpler. Shaving water is cold. Cologne, if applied at all, smells faintly medicinal. And yet, there's still that flicker of self-care, of quiet dignity. After all, the mirror demands it. You think back to your earlier Edwardian dressing room, the gilded mirrors, the glowing creams, the onion-scented faith in radiance. It all seems impossibly distant now. But beneath the soot and fatigue, there remains the same human pulse, a longing to feel alive, to see something kind staring back from the glass. The Great War ends, but the Edwardian dream is gone. In its place rises a harder, leaner beauty, born of necessity and rebellion. The flapper is waiting just around the corner, lipstick blazing, hair cropped scandalously short. But tonight, in this liminal moment between empire and modernity, you linger with those caught in between. You imagine one of them lying down at last, exhausted from the day's work. Her hands smell faintly of soap and metal, her hair pinned hastily, her skin bare. She doesn't pray for radiance anymore, just for rest. Yet as she drifts into sleep, her face softens in the half-light and you see it clearly. Beauty never truly left. It simply stopped asking permission. The Edwardian night, once perfumed and polished, now breathes differently, rougher, truer. And you realize that somewhere between the boudoir and the battlefield, humanity found something deeper than allure: endurance. The dawn that follows feels quieter, heavier, like the world is catching its breath after a long-held note. The war has ended, the dust is settling, and as you step once more into the echo of Edwardian rooms, you find them changed beyond recognition. The air smells less of rosewater and more of mothballs and time. You walk down a street in London where the townhouses still stand, their facades intact, their chimneys still puffing, but behind the lace curtains, the rhythm has shifted. The old routines of beauty and rest have loosened their grip, replaced by something brisker, more pragmatic. You find yourself standing before a dressing table again. The same mirror glints back, but the bottles are fewer now. The labels are newer, mass-produced, affordable, democratic. A small tin of Pond's cream sits beside a cheap powder puff, both promising modern radiance. There's something oddly touching about it. The dream of beauty survived the war, yes, but it came back smaller, humbler, more portable. You watch as a woman smooths cold cream across her cheeks in little circles. No maid stands behind her now, no silver tray, no silk robe. She's doing this herself after a full day at the typewriter. Her hands are steady. The ritual is faster but not careless. You can almost hear her thinking, if I can't rest like an Edwardian duchess, I'll still end the day clean. There's a kind of grace in that. Historians still argue whether the post-Edwardian shift marked the death of ritual or its rebirth. Did the simplification of beauty mean loss or liberation? You can't decide. Maybe it depends on the night. Factories churn out lotions and soaps once made by hand. Perfume becomes a commodity, no longer mixed in apothecaries but bottled by the thousands. And yet, somewhere between the scent of lavender and gasoline, something tender persists, the need to care for the self before surrendering to sleep. You picture new advertisements pasted across brick walls, confident women in bobbed haircuts smiling above slogans like, "A modern woman uses Lux." The Edwardian whisper of secrecy is gone. Beauty is public now, democratic and loud. There's no shame in a bright face, only in looking tired. And in that new logic, you glimpse the faint outline of your own world. The routines that were once drenched in ritual are now streamlined into efficiency. The bath, once an hour-long affair of oils and attendants, becomes a quick soak before bed. Hair washing, once weekly at best, turns into a regular expectation, thanks to plumbing and commercial shampoo. The soft hum of a bathroom tap replaces the clinking of porcelain pitchers. You run your fingers along the edge of a chipped sink, and you realize something else. Beauty has become electric. The hum of current fills the air, curling irons that plug into sockets, electric razors, hair dryers the size of helmets. A new intimacy forms between the body and the machine. Where Edwardian women once prayed to the gods of light and mirror, the post-war generation worships at the altar of convenience. And yet there's still a hint of theater left. Lipstick gleams brighter than ever. Eyeshadow, once scandalous, becomes fashionable. You can almost hear the ghosts of Edwardian ladies sighing in disbelief as flappers strut past, eyes painted like peacocks. But that's the secret, isn't it? Every generation thinks it's inventing beauty for the first time. The truth is, it's only reinventing the same longing to be seen, to glow in the half-light before sleep. You wander from mirror to mirror, from decade to decade, and notice how each one reflects the same question differently. Edwardian women looked inward, seeing beauty as a virtue. Post-war women look outward, seeing it as expression. And you, standing here, half in the past, half in your own glowing screen's reflection, are somewhere in between. A small part of you still longs for the ritual, the careful brushing, the quiet gratitude, the candle flickering beside the bed. The rest of you loves the speed, the way modern life lets you press a button, swipe a screen, and move on. Maybe the Edwardians weren't wrong to linger. Maybe slowing down, even for a moment, was part of the magic. You close your eyes and imagine their world again, not as it was, but as a feeling. The scent of lavender oil, the hush of a corset unlaced, the faint click of a gas lamp being turned down. And then the silence, the kind that feels earned. It's funny, for all their formality, those Edwardian nights seem to have known how to end. Each act, each motion, built toward rest. Every layer removed, every breath slowed. By the time the last pin was pulled, the body itself knew what came next. You wonder if that's what we've lost. Now the light never truly dims. The hum of machines is constant. The reflection of the mirror is always backlit. Maybe that's why we can't sleep, because we never really finish our rituals anymore. You imagine yourself there, sitting beside an Edwardian woman who's just unpinned her hair. She looks at you, at your glowing screen, your bottled serums, your multitasking mind, and she smiles faintly. She doesn't envy you. She only says softly, "You rush." And she's right. In her slow, deliberate world, each night had an ending, and each morning had a beginning. Somewhere between those two was the gentle art of letting go, the kind of surrender that leaves the face not just clean, but calm. You take one last glance in the mirror, at both your reflections side by side, her candle lit, you pixel lit, and you see how beauty has changed, yet never left. The night feels different now, softer somehow, though you can't tell whether it's because of the dimming light or the quiet realization that you've come full circle. You're still standing in front of that same mirror, but it has changed faces over time. Polished mahogany, then chrome, then glass lit by LEDs. Through it all, the same reflection has looked back, curious, searching, human. You lean in, and for a moment the mirror shimmers. The Edwardian glow flickers back. Lace curtains ripple, a clock ticks faintly on the mantel, and you're once again inside that long, perfumed century where beauty was ritual and rest was art. You can almost hear the hush of a lady's maid at work, the rustle of silk as she helps her mistress into a nightgown that rustles like whispered secrets. And yet the woman in the mirror doesn't quite look the same as before. She's all of them, every figure you've met tonight. The Duchess with her pearls, the housemaid with her quick hands, the war widow brushing her hair by candlelight, the flapper painting rebellion across her lips. She meets your gaze and suddenly you realize she's been waiting for you. Because this isn't just a history of creams and corsets, it's a map of how we learn to face ourselves. You picture her routine step by step one last time. She washes her face in cool water from a porcelain bowl, watching the ripples fade. She smooths cream over her cheeks, then brushes her hair, slowly, deliberately, as if tamming the day itself. The movements are the same ones you know, only slower, more reverent. She doesn't rush. She never has. Historians still argue whether those nightly beauty rituals were tools of control or quiet acts of rebellion, whether they kept women chained to vanity, or gave them a rare moment of autonomy in a world that rarely granted it. You can see both sides now. In a world that demanded poise, perhaps the mirror was the only place a woman could look herself in the eye and say, "This is mine." And then there's you. You who live in a time where the mirror is in your pocket, glowing at all hours, whispering back to you through pixels and filters. You've inherited their rituals, only sped them up, digitized them, flattened the space between self and reflection. You cleanse, tone, moisturize, you scroll. You take one last glance before bed, wondering if it's good enough. Maybe that's the modern version of their nightly prayer, half vanity, half reassurance. A way of asking the same old question, am I still here? The Edwardians would have understood that. Beneath all their rules and routines, that's what they were really doing, reminding themselves of their place in a world changing faster than they could hold it. Beauty was never just about the surface. It was a conversation with the self, held in whispers and candlelight. And maybe that's what your pre-sleep ritual is too. You imagine sitting beside that long line of faces stretching backward through time. Someone's heating milk for a facial tonic. Someone else is dabbing on cold cream. Someone, perhaps, is just brushing her teeth under electric light for the first time. The tools change, but the purpose remains. A final gesture before surrendering to sleep. The room quiets. The last flicker of the lamp fades. You can still smell faint traces of rose and lavender, faintly sweet under the heavier scent of time. You reach out to the mirror, half expecting your hand to pass through, but instead it presses against the cool glass. For a heartbeat, you feel a pulse beneath it, a memory of all those who came before you. You smile, because it turns out the great Edwardian secret wasn't about powders or perfumes at all. It was about presence, about taking one last, slow look before the day ends and saying, I was here, and I mattered enough to care. The mirror releases you gently. The reflection dissolves, leaving only your own soft outline. The hum of your room fades to a sigh, the kind that invites sleep. And as you sink into the quiet, you think of those who once did the same, unpinning their hair, loosening corsets, washing away the dust of their world. You realize that despite the centuries between you, you're part of the same nightly ritual, one long exhale stretching through history. The beauty, the discipline, the rebellion, it all leads here to this still moment. You close your eyes and the last thing you feel is the faint scent of rosewater, the whisper of lace, and the warmth of knowing that you, too, have unveiled your own kind of beauty. The room grows quieter now. Even the clock seems to hesitate between ticks, as if reluctant to disturb the calm you've created. Your breath slows. The world, for once, asks nothing more of you. The Edwardian women have vanished into their dreams, their mirrors gone dim, their footsteps fading down endless hallways of sleep. You lie there, half in their world, half in your own, and you realize how small and tender these nightly acts truly are: washing a face, brushing the hair, lighting a candle. Each one is a tiny rebellion against chaos. A promise that, no matter how fast the world spins, you will pause long enough to honor the body that carries you through it. The walls breathe. The scent of old perfume drifts through your thoughts like mist. You picture a line of soft faces turning toward rest, women and men alike, each one illuminated by a different kind of light. Gas, candle, bulb, screen. It doesn't matter. The glow is the same. So tonight, when you turn off your light, let it feel like continuity, not loss. The Edwardians are still there somewhere, dreaming beneath embroidered quilts and moonlight, brushing the same hair you once brushed, whispering the same wordless goodnight. Your pulse slows, the air deepens, the story folds gently in on itself. Sleep well, traveler through time. The mirror is at peace. Sweet dreams.